Everybody, it's Maddie Cummins. Those of you that don't know me, I'm a journey coach and a social worker and the founder of Calming the Chaos Collective and the owner of Cerebrations, LLC. Um, and you are on this page because you deal with worry and anxiety, and it's a very complex thing. It's really easy to say, hey, I've got anxiety, but that can mean a million different things. And so part of what we do is we have a theme that we go through during the week and try to break down some of those pieces. So as always, if you come on live, say hi. If you're watching on replay, just put hashtag replay and so that we can connect in and make sure that you're getting all your questions answered and talk about the sense of self that we've been talking about the last couple of days, because the last 5 days. So I have to tell you, there's this kind of interesting thing that happened to me. I was pretty clear about, I thought about who I was. And that's a very big brain function, the defining of ourselves. And one of the things, I went through a class at church about around healing and how do you heal past traumas. And the very first day they asked us to make a list of the roles and how we define ourselves. And my list was very much, it was social worker, mom, daughter. It was like all of this stuff that wasn't really about me. It was all what other people defined me, how other people defined myself. And that was a real eye-opener to me about how much this concept of self is really, really challenging. So, and I think one of the things I want to talk about today is the other thing that happens with self, which is why I think this concept of self can be really difficult if we're defining ourselves by outside forces. If you're coming on, just say hi, and I can see you. I can't see you otherwise, because like I've told you guys, I have this little eyeball that says how many people are watching, but that's also hi if you're watching. Glad that you're here. But here's the thing about self, when we're defining ourselves by outside forces, whether that's work, family, daughter, whatever that is, that gets really tricky because whenever I go into whatever setting I'm walking into, whether that's my family setting, my home setting, my work setting, my sense of self will change because of who I'm interacting with. The other complex thing about a sense of self is we do change over time. Although we may have this base personality, we change. We become a mother. We may become a wife. We become a social worker. We become whatever those things are that we become over time. And when we don't have a really good root of this is who I am, that feels very, very complicated, because then you're changing based on whatever is happening. Instead of a role that you're playing, like mom, it becomes a definition of who you are. And in a way that I talk about this is when my son was born, and I was an older mom. I was 38. When my son was born, I actually really struggled with the definition of who I was, because I felt like I suddenly was this mom, and that was my new self, and how do I play that out, instead of understanding that my definition of myself comes from inside, not from outside forces. Mom is a role I play, and that's my role. And so I think when we aren't able to define who we are, that also increases the anxiety, because we're always just kind of running around going, okay, I'm going to walk in this store and be this person. I'm going to walk in this store and be this person. I'm going to walk in that store and be, hey, Susie, it's good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. We're always defining ourselves based on those outside forces. And so that definition always changes instead of the core of this is who I am. And so, when I, back to what I was talking about with this class, I was taking when I had to write down the definition of how I defined myself, and there were all these roles. The one thing I never even wrote on there was a child of God. That wasn't even on my list, because I didn't have a concept of that's an inner thing we have to get. It's not an outside force defining us. That's something that our spirit defines us. And so in the Holy Spirit helps us with that definition and remembering that we're a child of God. And so, I think when we start coring down to who I am and who I am in God, I think that becomes the very much clearer picture about who we are and how we define ourselves. And now when I walk into work, I walk into work as Maddie, who is a child of God, who is, kind and compassionate and all of these things that make me a good social worker, not Maddie the social worker, and then I'm meeting whatever expectations they have there. I am pretty congruent. When I'm in my friends, I'm the same person I am at work. I just may be doing different things. And so what I really want to challenge you to do is stop and think about, how do the outside forces, when you walk into those doors, when you walk into that place, how do those outside forces help make you define yourself, instead of you defining you by who you are and who you are with God. And I would just sit down and write that stuff out. Like, when I go to work, or when I go to my friend's house, or when I go to my family, what comes out, instead of I am very congruent everywhere I go. Do not misunderstand me. This is not easy. We always change behaviors when we're around our families, because our family is kind of our origin of, neural pathways. We talk about that. But it is helpful to say, this is who I am, no matter where I am in this. And I have found, for me, it's helped me become very clear about not meeting other people's expectations, but meeting my own and meeting God's. And those are always congruent with other people's expectations when we are defining who we are through God. One of the things I would recommend, again, is that not only do you stop and and just kind of put down on a journal or on a paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. Like, how do you define yourself, and how does that relate to your definition of God, and how your relationship with God? I think it's also a really good idea to stop and think, okay, so God tells me I am fearfully and wonderfully made. How does that define me? I am the daughter of a king. How does that define me? Like, I remember reading through some of these Bible verses and going, oh my heavens, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. How can I not be an amazing piece of God's kingdom when I am fearfully and wonderfully made? And so I think it really helps ground us in those definitions of God. One of the things I would love for you to do is, as you're doing this exercise, just come back to the comments and put in the comments that what Bible verses you're finding, what definitions you're finding, how are you relating to the world based on your true self of how you define yourself and how God defines you, and not expectations from the outside. I also will just kind of give you a heads up. The beauty about this is that the boundaries become much more clear for you, not necessarily other people. But when I can say, this is who I am, I can look at the boundary and go, that's not congruent with me. So this sense of self is very, very important. And it's very difficult, because transitions in life are hard. And as we travel through those transitions, our definition of self will get shaky, and we have to find that complexity on how to keep that root in there, that at the end of the day, we are defined by God. And what a beautifully amazing thing that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So guys, I am just so grateful to you. As always, it's great to see some of you online today. Have a great weekend, and everybody just keep trucking along and finding that peace that we all deserve. So you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.